on to week 5 in the UFL, and we've had some pretty interesting shit happening so far. Is this the week where we're just going to build a roster full of San Antonio Brahmas? I think so, man.
Let's do it. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez. We got guest Scottradamus back, of course, and special guest Tron from the Discord. What's up, Tron? How you doing, man? Welcome in. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Scott, what's going on with you, bro?
I'm good. Ready for this weekend.
So, and Ellie, of course, is here. Let's hope that Ellie's dial-up internet is working today. All right, so Scott, what are we thinking for this week, man? Like, what have we learned so far this year? We're in week 5. I think we know who's good, who's not. We know what players are rising to the top. I know a lot of people overreacted to week 1 and week 2, especially with this USFL versus XFL. We're starting to figure out kind of which teams are really getting there. And pretty much like we're figuring out like what works DFS wise. In your opinion, like what have you learned and what should we be focusing on week 5 now that everybody kind of has like the information that we need, despite some random shit that may occur?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be the variance of spring football. But I mean, basically, I think at this point, everybody knows salary really doesn't matter. I think everybody knows there's safe quarterbacks and there's some sketchy quarterbacks. I think everybody knows that, at least for this week, it looks like we're finally going to get our first true feeling safe about some running backs in the field this week. So I'm pretty excited about that. Week 1, that's what everybody did. They played the safe running backs, but I think now it's a clear-cut path. There is a lot of good running backs for us to play, and I think that's going to be the move this week, is going 2 to 3 RBs.
Yeah, we've got some injury news to talk about. Like Scott said, there's going to be some value running backs that are high owned that we're going to have to incorporate. Are we willing to play 2 again? Because Scott, I think a few weeks ago we were like, well, hey, 2 running backs this week might be the jam, and that trend kind of continued. Maybe we're different by not playing 2 quarterbacks this week. Who knows? So Tron, we've got 2 games on Saturday night again here. The Brahmas and Renegades and Stallions and Roughnecks. What are your thoughts on this, man? This is pretty annoying, right? Are you able to watch both of these games? I have to use the Fox Sports app on my Roku TV, and they give you an hour preview, and I just delete it and reinstall it. That's really the only way that I'm able to watch this shit. So what are your thoughts on this schedule, man?
I don't like it at all. I wish they'd give each game their own time slot, but that would make the most sense to me. But no, the 2 at the once, I can watch them at the same time. But yeah, it's kind of a hassle to do that anyways.
Yeah. And Ellie, it sucks too for us because then we got to go back and rewatch the game at another time. Like at least I'm only watching one game at a time. So that really sucks ass. But anyways, I'm sure it has to do with the draft or the schedule or whatever. But hey, we got football, so I can't complain too much. Let's jump in, Ellie. Let's just jump into this first look on these lines here. Let me pop this up. So the first game, this is going to be interesting. I'm used to building on Saturday morning and really jumping in the Discord and chatting in there. By the way, guys, join that Discord. We've got a bunch of smart dudes in there chatting it up. But Brahmas at Arlington 0-4. They've had opportunities to win. Their offense at times has looked pretty good. But look, San Antonio, we all talked about this even in the preseason in our first show. San Antonio had they were the least. Basically, Vegas thought this team was not going to have a chance this year for whatever reason. I put some money down on them when they were plus, 2,000 to win the championship. They seem to be one of the better teams that we could choose every week DFS-wise. They might not be the overall best team, but DFS-wise, we should probably start our builds with San Antonio Brahmas. This is the 7 p.m. game. This is a 2.5 point spread in favor of San Antonio. Are you surprised, Scott, by this spread here, considering San Antonio is one of the better teams. It's a 42.5 point total. Arlington Renegades defense has not been super impressive this year at all, Scott.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, D-Day looked really good last week, I thought, and the Renegades looked really bad. So to me, I thought the spread would be bigger, but they, I think in general to entice betting, they've gotten these a little bit closer to kind of like entice you into betting on this, because clearly it's the Brahmas by a long shot, maybe more than one touchdown. So yeah, it is surprising.
Yeah, I mean, D-Day, we all talked about D-Day, just jamming him in at his price last week. It didn't not work out. I mean, what did he have, like 13.5 fantasy points or something to that effect? He got, we got some Lovett action. He didn't really get into the end zone as much as we needed at a Dormady. But at 6K, 13 fantasy points, I still profited with lineups with him. And I'm pretty sure some of the top lineups still had him, even though McCarron put up 23 fantasy points. This week, he's priced up as he should be. But I'm willing to go back to the well, absolutely, with Dormady, especially against Renegades defense. Dormady put up, 265 yards passing. He looked good. They slung the ball like 37 times. I mean, it's an A.J. Smith offense. We can expect them to throw the ball a lot. The only concern is, are they going to hand the ball to John Lovett? And I love it. Are they going to hand it to this dude every time and he's going to vulture 2 touchdowns? We've seen these running backs vulture these touchdowns away in games that we heavily stack, and that's always a concern. So maybe get into some Brahmas defense, maybe get into some Lovett. I don't even mind getting to Dormady and Lovett. Who knows? We'll have to talk about that. Thoughts on Renegade stacks here, Tron? Are you interested at all in getting to any Renegade stacks? Are you going to play anybody? I mean, we saw Tyler Vaughn's absolutely bust last week. Are you going back to the well with Vaughn's? Are you going to one-off some of these guys, or are you just going to stay away from them?
I probably won't be stacking Arlington at all. It's tough because I think they actually want to incorporate Lindsey Scott a little bit more than what they have been. And it's tough to do that with Luis Perez. You don't want to pay for him and then have Lindsey Scott come in and take away red zone looks and stuff like that. But yeah, I think maybe some one-offs would be okay. Tyler Vaughn's, I'm sure you can go back to him. Yeah, he busted last week, but I mean, he is definitely the biggest target earner on that team. So there's no doubt that I think you can go back to him. And I don't know. I actually have been. I'm on the Letty Brown train too myself. I actually think he's been getting pretty even workload with Davion Smith, and he looks a little bit better as well.
Yeah, and especially in a game where we think that probably Arlington's going to be losing, you're probably going to see a lot more Letty Brown. But you always do have that Davion Smith, multiple goal line opportunities if they even can get it down there. Ellie, who are you taking in this game? And anything jump out to you depth chart wise? We don't have McFarland. We didn't really talk about that. So we got John Lovett, and we got guess who's back? Morgan Ellison moved up the depth chart. That's an interesting play here. Last year with Seattle, he was impressive until he got hurt. I'm interested in maybe sprinkling a couple lineups with him in. But does anything else jump out to you? Because look, Justin Smith. I was watching camp videos, and Justin Smith him and Dormady were clicking, and we saw it last week with Justin Smith having a pretty good game. Cody Latimer is still here. I'm going to play a Katie Cannon lineup or two. That's just by default. So Ellie, what are your thoughts? Anything jump out to you about this depth chart? Anything weird jump out? You're muted, Broseph. Check. Hello. He's muted. Hey, Scott, does anything jump out to you about this depth chart?
Exactly what you said. Your boy Ellison showed up at the running back. That is a big piece, guys. When we see someone move from 3 to 2, that means they're going to give him some work. So I think personally, I love it. I've been saying it since week 1. I think Lovett is a smash play this week, but I am telling you right now, and Tyson knows this, Tyson played a lot of Morgan Ellison last year. He loved this guy. I think we could see Morgan Ellison get not a decent amount of snaps, but enough snaps to make him interesting.
Ellie, you there? Check. Not there yet. All right, let's move on to this next game here. Stallions.
What about now?
Yeah, I can hear you, bro. You're good to go. Stallions are 7.5 point favorites on the road against the Roughnecks, 42.5 point total. Like, I think it's clear the Stallions from top to bottom are the best team in the UFL. But fantasy wise, they're jumping between quarterbacks. We don't know which guy is going to get the run, even though one guy starting is somebody, if a guy has a bad quarter, do they bring the other guy in? As well as, guys like Marable are out. So now we got Ricky Persons Jr. With potentially Larry Roundtree. There's a lot of moving parts for Birmingham. I think you could probably stack the shit out of their defense and whichever running back you choose. Tron, what do you think about this matchup here, man? Stallions, is this a stackable game? I mean, we've talked shit about Houston's defense last week, but if you look at their fantasy output, I mean, they're getting pretty much 10 fantasy points a game for defense, minus that one bad game they had a few weeks ago. So what are we doing with this game? Is this a defense from the Stallions sort of situation, or are you sprinkling in some of these cheap running backs? What are you doing with the Stallions?
Yeah, it's again, it's tough to stack this team as well. It just with the quarterback situation, but yeah, I mean, you could obviously go the running back defense route. And if you wanted to, I think it's possible that Houston could put up some points, not many, but I don't think they're going to get shut out, but I mean, you could probably get some one-offs from Houston too if you wanted to, but other than that, this isn't a very attractive game to me. Yeah,
to massively stacked. Scott, what are we thinking about? I mean, Guantanamo Bay has been out. Sinet has been in there. Like, are we I'm not touching stacks from Houston, obviously. I don't think I want to play any quarterbacks, but just on the football side of things, what are we thinking the quarterback situation here could this be a split snap sort of thing? What do you think?
Yeah, so I watched both post-game pressers for both teams after last week, and I don't think Nolan Henderson's going to get snapped, so I think Reed is safe. We'll talk about this later, but I'm on the Mark Thompson fade train this week. But as far as the quarterbacks for Birmingham go, last week I talked some shit about Skip Holtz, and everybody did. He was crazy, but if you watch his post-game presser, man, this dude legitimately cares about these players, and he wants to get them tape. And I think he's going to play Martinez the whole game. I think Corral might come in for a snap or two. Martinez can always get injured. We know he can roll an ankle or something, and Corral can come in. But I think Martinez is going to play the whole game. I think he's a safe play, and he's one of my favorite quarterbacks.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, if you're thinking Adrian Martinez is going to play the whole game, I think he's a great option. For sure. Now, Ricky Persons Jr. is probably going to be one of the highest owned players on the slate. We're seeing Marable inactive. Larry Roundtree, a former Charger guy, coming up. We've seen this number 2 running back get work. Any interest in Roundtree, Ellie? I don't know. Like, to me, yeah, he's got NFL experience. And we've seen what backup running backs can do in the UFL. They can absolutely break the slate at like 1% ownership. I don't know that I'm going to go that route, to be honest. I might be on a wait and see here. But, at minimum, Ricky Persons Jr. is probably a pretty good pick. But look, what are your thoughts on this Houston Roughnecks defense here against the run? I know they didn't have a good game a few weeks ago when they were chalk, but I think they could shut people down potentially. Ellie?
Yeah, so we'll credit this to James Larson on Twitter, but Stallions are on a 11-game winning streak. Their last loss was to the Gamblers, currently the XFL Roughnecks, right? So I know that really doesn't matter here, but just a kind of an interesting point. Maybe we get a little bit of competitiveness. This is the last team to win against the Stallions. But look, man, to your point, I think Roundtree is definitely a guy who's in play. I don't know that we're going to need the savings on a slate like this. There's just what we've seen. St. Louis, Mateo Durant going on IR. I think there's enough that's going to open up on this slate, and salary already just like Dormandy. What I was trying to say when I was on fucking mute or whatever. Like I still don't think that team is the Brahmas necessarily been priced appropriately. Some of those, there were some pretty nice deep bombs that we saw from this team. And hey, sorry guys, there's some nice deep balls that we saw from this team on Saturday, right? One or two of those converts, and honestly, we're looking at an 18 to 20 point performance from Dormandy. So I definitely think that he would be priced up a little bit closer to 10K. So I still think we're a little bit inefficient on the pricing this week.
So there's always one-off dudes or stackable dudes. Like Deion Kane is one of the better wide receivers in the league. He's going to have one of these massive games. I know he's already done pretty well recently. But Sternberger, Kane, you can mix in maybe a little Mari Rodgers action. There's plenty of options on the Stallions if you're just looking to get one-offs. Let's go to these Sunday games here. So Battlehawks, we don't have information on this yet because it's the Sunday game. Hopefully, like maybe while we're doing this show, we'll actually get some information released as far as depth chart wise goes. But Battlehawks versus Defenders, this is a 46.5 point total. Look, I feel like we should start every build, at least in our heads with, all right, how many San Antonio guys are we going to get to? Are we going to stack them with the quarterback? And how many St. Louis Battlehawks are we going to get to as one-offs or with the quarterbacks? These guys, they're going to put up points. This is, we're going against the Defenders here. The Defenders have underachieved. Somehow they managed to get, have some success. But I'm not super interested in stacking a ton of Defenders. But it could be ideal because there's probably not going to be a ton of ownership going to the Defenders, but we got to look at this Battlehawks defense. They're not terrible, but they will give up points, and the amount of points that they score is going to cause this Defenders teams to have the ball more times. So Scott, what are we doing with this game here, man? It's the Battlehawks. We got to play at least one dude, and in my opinion, Shepard now with Ja'Cour Pearson coming in his first game, absolutely dominated. What did he get, like 11 receptions he had a ton of targets at minimum. To me, it feels like Shepard is so important on special teams. He changes the entire game. Doesn't get a damn point for an 80-yard kickoff return, but he changes the game every time he touches the ball. He's banged up, so I don't even know if he's going to play yet. But it feels like Shepard is maybe the odd man out because he's so important. Do we see a little bit more Blake Jackson? What are we doing with Aitman? What are we doing with Butler? And now we got Ja'Cour Pearson. This team is so damn stacked that I don't even know who to pick. Scott?
Yeah, it's as far as the game goes, for me, this was a really good game last year, if anybody remembers. But it's in DC. I am a little bit lower on McCarron. His price came up, and I'm a little bit lower on him this week. But these receivers is really where you need to make your stand and really focus in on what happened last week. When we did the show last week, Pearson was not in the Draftkings pool, but we all know how much we like Peasy. He is by far one of the best, if not the best, receivers, especially under 6 feet in the league. But for me, I think the biggest takeaway to look at last week is, Butler is kind of back on track to where we thought he would be early in the season. So I think Butler's still going to be safe as long as he plays. And I think what I've been told is that he's going to play. He's good to go. Shepard, on the other hand, got a little banged up. And I agree with you. I think Shepard is going to be the odd man out because Aitman still ended up getting a 12% target share, had 93% of the snaps, and to get 5 targets. Blake Jackson saw an uptick. He's been at around 23% snap count. He's now at 57% as of last week with 10% target share, 4 targets. So to me, Blake Jackson's coming up. Shepard's dropping down. Peasy is the man there. It seems like Butler's going to be safe. And I think Aitman is probably going to be the sneaky pick. I think people are going to go Pearson, Butler, fade Shepard. And I think Jackson and Aitman is going to be, a nice piece to get in there that's going to be low owned.
So Tron, you're in St. Louis. You're close to this team. Scott, you're a big Battlehawks fan. Like, I'm waiting for this team to absolutely break out and become the best team in the league. Like, to me, they're kind of holding themselves back, even though they played well. I'm waiting for them to absolutely just start, go on a 5-game win streak and absolutely crush people. But this is the Defenders. They've had some trouble with DC in the past, and it's in DC. We kind of buried the lead here. Durant is out. So is this a massive Sailors? Like, are we jamming Sailors in? Are we doing a naked McCarron? with a running back potentially. What are your thoughts here, Tron? Because this game is going to be the one to target along with that San Antonio game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can do anything with the Battlehawks. The Sailors thing is interesting, because I just know that this team is going to pass more times than not. So I mean, while he still can get there, I'm just a little worried about how much they're actually going to use him. We have seen some of the running backs in the past and just kind of disappear off from this Battlehawks team. So
Yeah,
it makes me a little uneasy with them, coming in with his ownership's pretty high right now, but we'll see how that ends up. But yeah, I'm a little nervous with Sailors.
Yeah, I mean, look, Gallman, to me, they clearly don't like him. they tried him out. They're like, I don't really like him. But that doesn't mean he's not going to get run. It feels like every time a guy has a down week, he jumps back the next week. I don't know. Am I crazy, Tron, to consider maybe mixing in a little Gallman to counteract that Sailors chalk?
I don't think that's that crazy. I've heard crazier stuff for sure. But yeah, Gallman you could, I think, but it's I don't know. I just don't really like the running backs in St. Louis this week. So
Ellie, any interest in DC here at all? Like, I mean, look, the Battlehawks will give up some yards in the air. Like, are we thinking Harmon? Are we thinking Kiki Coutier? Like, if you look at Coutier, whatever the fuck his name is, if you look at his box scores, they're not impressive. But we know that when the dude's on the field, he's getting targeted. Any interest in like getting different and maybe going some defender stacks with a run back from the Battlehawks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going to see. We saw a little bit more out of this offense last week from the defenders, and we are going to have to. The Battlehawks they give up points. This is a 46.5 total. You got to have some kind of running back, and I think there's some pieces that we'll like from DC.
What about their run game, though? Like, Scott, do we actually know who their running back is? I mean, Cameron Harris is getting run. But what about their backup? Like, what are we thinking about defenders' run game? Because this team, when I think of this team, I think of Abram Smith, I think of Jordan Teamu, and I think of RPO. I think of them dominating on the ground. They just haven't done that. They've strayed away from that this year for whatever reason. Are they going to get back to the run game ever?
I mean, I think this week, if it's going to be any week, it's going to be this week. And I think White is the kind of sneaky play if you want to go that direction. They clearly don't have faith in Cameron Harris. We knew that from the beginning. And I think Teamu, he like I said before, he wants to rush more. He only had 4 carries last week, but he got 24 yards. It is kind of a revenge spot for Teamu, as we all know. But, I would take stabs at White, but I think the running back pool this week is so juicy that White would be like not a Galbrain flyer, but he'd be a deep flyer. But just real quick, if I can touch on the receivers, we saw an irregularity last week with Brandon Smith basically out and the emergence of Vincent Smith. Ty Scott even kind of got out a little bit. So Roland went way down from a 94% snap count to a 35. So I think the receiver room is the tricky spot to figure out because Vincent Smith at almost the bare minimum looks extremely juicy. If you check out his lines from last week, 25% target share, 5 targets. So to me, Roland and Smith at their price could be sneaky, and Harmon is like the guy. I think I'm not playing Kiki anymore at his price. But the receiver room, if you take a look at it, it got a little bit weird last week, and that might have been because of the weather. But that's something to keep an eye on. Vincent Smith is, I think, looking pretty juicy this week.
So Panthers going into Memphis against the Showboats. This is a 40 total. This feels like a game to target the defenses. We saw Darius Victor finally break out, look pretty good, but EJ Perry's out. What are we doing with this game, Tron? In your opinion, is this a one-off situation? Maybe mix a running back in with the defense. We have some good running backs in this game. It's a 40 total. I feel like, the Showboats, I think they have week 1. They helped me get to that 10K with their 22 fantasy points. I think that's the highest this year as far as defenses go. What are you doing with this game here, man? This feels like a one-off situation, but hey, if you want to gal brain it and stack this game up, I don't hate that either, man.
Yeah, I don't see me stacking it too often. If I do, it'll be a last minute decision. But yeah, I think Michigan's running backs offer a little intrigue this week. I think there's also a couple. I'm not sure how Etling. I didn't really watch that game last week, so I'm not really sure how he looked per se. I can read the stats, but it seems like they may because they just cut Jordan Sewell, right? From the Panthers. So I think there may be some change of hierarchy in the wide receiver room there. So I think that's something to maybe be a little aware of there.
Yeah. Ellie, what about this game here real quick, and we'll jump into this breakdown. But this feels just like both of these defenses could be one of the higher owned behind Birmingham, maybe. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good one to target defenses if you want to, if you're comfortable building with stacks and you want the defense running back handcuff, this is fine to do it. And just, for large field GPPs, 150 maxers, like this isn't, I don't think you're terribly poor off considering this game. I know it's a low total, but 1.5 point spread is implying a competitive game overall. So probably don't need to get crazy. This isn't like a 4-2 stack, but if you wanted to do a 2-1 of this game, I don't think it's the end of the world.
All right, let's get into this breakdown. We're going to go position by position and look at salaries. Let's get into it. Break it down. All right, so quarterback. Adrian McCarron is the most expensive, obviously, 10.9K. Quentin Dormandy, D-Day, 9K. I expect him to look pretty damn good this week. Let me sort by salary here. EJ Perry at 9,800 is out for an extended period of time. He got absolutely annihilated. Matt Corral not even playing potentially. He could maybe get a drive or two, but probably an Adrian Martinez situation at 9,300. Jordan Teamo, 96. Case Cookus, 92. If you look at this, Quentin Dormandy is he's like the 5th or 6th highest owned guy or price guy. Sinet, 8,900. Scott, where are you going here, man? It feels like this is another week. We talked about it last week. It feels like there's really only 2 or 3 guys that I'd be willing to play. And you kind of talked me into Martinez with what you were saying earlier. It feels like a McCarron, Martinez, Dormandy situation, unless you want to get to maybe some Case Cookus. Maybe you're hoping there's some upside for this Memphis offense. But that offensive line has let us down this year, even though they looked a little bit better last week. What are we doing at quarterback here, man? To me, look, I'm a huge D-Day guy. I'm going to be playing a shitload of D-Day, but of course I'm going to get to some McCarron. You seem to be on the Adrian Martinez bandwagon here.
Yeah, I mean, I like McCarron a lot. I think the salary is getting there, and I think DC could be tough. So I'm always touting McCarron. This week, he's probably 3rd. My pool is very, very, very small this week with quarterbacks. I'm literally Xing out everybody except for 4 guys, and you nailed it. It's McCarron. It is Dormandy. If you watched the game last week, again, he did not have a good DFS day, but if you watch the game, he did stuff that Garbers can't do.
Yeah.
Dormandy has touch on the deep ball. This guy can sling it. We know that. That is, if it does land, we're talking big points here for receivers and for Dormandy. So I love Dormandy. And Martinez is my stand this week just because it's like playing Cam Newton in the early days, man. This guy just has so much upside with his arm and his legs. So I like it. I like Birmingham. They got a soft matchup this week. And then my 4th quarterback might be surprising, but it's Danny Etling. That price is too juicy. They signed Bryce Perkins, who is an awesome quarterback who probably will be starting next week. But Danny Etling is going to get the full game. And I think Memphis is kind of like the Roughnecks. They're all over the place. So Etling liked Sims. I think the Etling-Sims combo is pretty good. I think he looked pretty good when he was out there for a $7,800 quarterback. So that's my pool. I'm literally Xing everybody else out.
Tron, what are your thoughts on quarterback here, man? It feels like we could pretty much grab whoever we want. There's enough value on this slate. There isn't that Dormandy 6K sort of guy that jumps out to you, but you got to think that the player pool is pretty limited here, at least for me. What about you?
Yeah, I would pretty much agree with Scott there with it's those four. I would even throw I would think Te'amu's still probably in my pool this week as well, though, in addition to what Scott had already said.
Yeah, absolutely. Ellie, let's get to running back here, dude. So Marable's out, McFarland's out, Mark Thompson is back in the mix, even though he's number 2 on the depth chart. Is he fully healthy? Is he going to get full run? We know if he's fully healthy and he's getting full run, we better play that mofo. He's 8,700, but I just don't know if this week is the week for that. Wes Hills at 8K, there's this defensive sort of game that we were talking about earlier with Michigan at Memphis. Do we want to target running backs in that game to be a little bit different because we have a ton of chalky running backs? Durant is out. Darius Victor had a great game. He's 7,400. Jacob Saylors is 7,300. Ricky Persons 71. If Ricky Persons was like in the 5K range like he was most of the year, he would be a near lock. But this is UFL, dude. Like, nobody is a lock. Like, maybe at quarterback, a Dormandy situation at 6K, maybe you could consider that. But I just feel like even though he's projected to be one of the highest owned guys, both Saylor and Persons, you don't have to play them in all your lineups. And I would specifically probably not play them together. I don't know. What do you think about that, Ellie?
Yeah, that's fine. So, like, one thing I do want to call out, you made a good point here. It's like, even though somebody's really chalky, you can't fall into the trap with UFL specifically of getting married to anybody. I think I had like 70% Tyler Vaughn's last week, and I should have fucking known better, right? Like, that's as simply as I can say it. You just don't go in with that much ownership on certain guys. That said, just real quick on Mark Thompson, sounds like the head coach wants to give them 25 carries on Sunday or whatever fucking day they play. Right. So does look like he is going to get pretty heavily involved. And he is going to be RB1. So look, if that's the case, like, I do think you need to consider him, but I think you look 25% ownership is probably reasonable. And I still don't think that's too crazy, but look, man, I don't know if I'm going to be opening up my running back pool too much. I think you prioritize, Mark Thompson and Jacob Saylors just in good spots because they have limited competition, and well, at least the coach speak says Thompson's going to get the run, and we know that Saylors doesn't have much competition. So, like, I think you can kind of pivot off of them for chalk or for deeper GPPs, but it's such a weird position in the UFL. Like, you kind of just if people are going to be funneling snaps to certain guys, and there's limited competition, I think you got to take a little bit of advantage of that. So I like both those guys. I don't think that's really groundbreaking. But outside of that, I think you kind of need to be in that 5,500 to 6,500 range and try not to overspend.
So Scott, John Lovett, he's getting maybe 15% projected ownership. Is this the guy that could break the slate and be lower owned, even though he's an obvious play just because of all this value that's come up over the last day or two?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can say that Lovett is one of my highest, gonna be one of my highest owned guys. He's not gonna be my highest, but he will be one of the highest owned guys. I just a little bit worry, kind of like what Tron brought up about Saylors in St. Louis. They like to sling the rock, right? So Saylors could end up being the odd man out if McCarron just really finds his groove. The same thing can happen in San Antonio. I know they're trying their hardest to get the running game going, but if Dormandy's feeling it, then Lovett could slightly fall down when it comes to target share and just getting carries. So for me, it's, I'm smashing Person Jr. I think he is just a smash play from a mile away. I mean, the coach talked about it. They love this guy. He is a workhorse. I called it a couple weeks ago. I think he's going to be the starter. I think he's the best running back in the league right now besides Mark Thompson. But, the head coach, the 20-25 snaps, that's great. But when you're down by 20 points, I don't know how that's going to help. So I'm fading Thompson this week. He's a safe play. Trust me, guys. He is the best player in the league. I just don't think the matchup is good, and I'm going to smash Person Jr. and have some love it. There's a couple other guys we can talk about. Darius Victor's on there as well. He had a bounce-back game last week. I don't know where Memphis can go. Case Cookis cannot get the ball off. He is just getting destroyed, that poor guy. So Victor, they're trying to get the running game off. So, to me, there's a couple other guys we can talk about as well.
Brother Phil's man crush is Darius Victor, and we haven't really seen him do much until last week. He's been kind of banged up. Tron, anybody else jump out to you? Like, who's going to be your highest owned running back, you think, this week? And is there any low owned dudes? Because we see it almost every week. We see like this 2% owned backup running back get 15 fantasy points, and you go, what the hell? Where did he come from? Anybody jump out to you like that this week?
First of all, Person probably will be the highest owned running back for me this week. And then after that, other guys that kind of stick out. I think that Matt Colburn is actually I think he's kind of taking the lead role over there in Michigan, kind of somewhat quietly. I know last week he outsnapped Hills 39-17. I mean, that's like almost triple.
Wow.
Right? So it seems like Colburn is definitely the guy to play in the Michigan backfield.
I'm going to talk about Morgan Ellison. I have some weird obsession with this guy. I don't know why. But he looked like the best running back in the league for like 2 or 3 weeks last year in the XFL. And if he's fully healthy, and San Antonio, if this turns into a different game, if this turns into a different than a John Lovett every snap sort of game, we could see some more Morgan Ellison. I'm reading into the fact that he went from 3rd to 2nd on the depth chart, because that's kind of a big deal to me. Somebody made that depth chart, and there was a reason behind that. So to me, I'm going to sprinkle him in. He's 4,800. I'll get like maybe 10% of him, but he's projected for like no ownership. And this is a situation where a guy like that can score a rushing touchdown, maybe get a couple of receptions, get you 10, 12 fantasy points, and get you over the top. With 2 or 3 running backs that are going to be massively owned this week. All right, let's get to wide receiver. There's a lot of dudes to talk about here. We have wide receiver / tight end tab here. And by the way, guys, I've got SaberSim loaded up here. Run the Sims. Their projections are great. If you guys are interested in joining Run the Sims, use the code EDGEDFS. Those guys know what they're doing. Usually you see some Run the Sims avatars up at the top of these leaderboards here every week. So make sure you guys jump in there. We're running SaberSim right now. They have some pretty good projections. I love that. I love their sims for every other sport. I usually aggregate a couple different sources when I'm using SaberSim for my builds. So definitely check out Run the Sims. Jontre Kirkland, let's just admit he's probably the best option week in, week out. Now, whether or not he actually performs or somebody else gets the touches, who knows? But a guy at 10.5K, we could probably afford him, but he's going to be probably 30+% owned. He's in, week out, going to be one of the higher owned guys. Ellie, what are we doing with top end wide receivers here? Because we've got a lot of options here. I think, to me, I'm going to be somewhat of a fade on Darius Shepard, just because what we were talking about earlier. But we got Peasy at 8,200. He's priced up. Hakeem Butler. Look at this. We have, what is that? 2, 4, 6. 4 out of the top 6 price guys are all on St. Louis, and deservingly so. This feels like a Marcel Aitman opportunity because he's probably going to be under 10% owned. And to me, if I'm playing the big $20 contest, and big is in quotes, I'm probably going to maybe prioritize a little bit more Marcel Aitman. But you can't deny the fact that Ja'Cour Pearson is going to be the guy that basically extends their run game. So that's another thing to talk about is, Sailors is a great play, but Pearson, on 3rd and 3, we might, or 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, we might just see a little screen pass to Pearson because he's that damn good. What are you doing here, Ellie, with all these top end wide receivers?
So first place I'll start is San Antonio. Just I really want to echo what Scott was saying about Dormady. Like the amount of attempts, deep ball attempts that we saw from that team was honestly kind of surprising. Just for your first week as a starter, right? Like if they increase on that volume at all, like I just this offense is going to explode. So that obviously means good things for John Trey Kirkland. But like where we kind of run into some struggles with the Battlehawks trying to figure out who the right wide receiver is, not the white wide receiver.
There are no white wide
but
receivers.
who the right wide receiver is, right? Yeah, exactly. That is easy. So, right, we can take some John Trey Kirkland and then maybe some other one-offs. There's going to be somebody who's going to split the seam and end up the field with an 80-yard touchdown playing with Dormady. So, like, I think you can kind of just open it up with your stacks there. But St. Louis is interesting, right? You know, our boy Cody Main is reporting that Akeem Butler and Darius Shepard both limited in practice this week. So, right, like, look, Marcel Aitman obviously is going to boost if we see any kind of limited route participation from Shepard or Butler. And then, goddamn, man, Ja'Cory Pearson, like, I should have just fucking played him. Should have just played him. The dude had so much involvement in the offense. Like, until we see something otherwise, you need to plan on that.
We should have never doubted Peasy, Scott. Like, I wanted to be cautious with it. But last year, obviously, Hakeem Butler broke out and he looked great. But last year, we all know Ja'Cory Pearson was the best wide receiver in the league. I'm super surprised this dude hasn't had any NFL opportunities. I don't know why. Maybe his size, who knows? What are we doing at the top end here for wide receiver? You know, we haven't even talked about guys like Jonathan Adams, Deion Kane. How do we actually build lineups without just jamming in guys like Kirkland and Butler? Like, it feels like a very, very tough group of decisions that we're going to have to make with all these top-end wide receivers, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me of last year, about week 3, week 4, when the Sea Dragons and the Battlehawks, we basically looked at both teams and said, okay, there is 5 options on each team. You know, there was like 10 receivers that you could have played. And, you know, similar to your Dega NASCAR video last week, it's kind of a spin the wheel situation. You literally can spin the wheel. Shout out if you guys don't watch the NASCAR video, the Edge NASCAR videos are great. But, you know, to me, it is a spin the wheel situation. It really is. You're not going to be able to just nail all the right picks. So you're going to have to take a stand on somebody. I think, you know, you said it best. There are some safer options in Kirkland, Butler, Pearson, and Stevenson. I think Latimer sees the uptick. The targets were there. He just missed on a couple throws. And if you heard the open mics last week, you know, Dormady wants to get the ball to Latimer. He really does. So to me, I think Latimer is a guy I'm going to this week. Of course, Kirkland's there. The price, you got to pay for him, though. You know what I mean? And if he fails, your lineup is dead. So there's a good zone of players here. But yeah, if you want to get away from the Brahmas Battlehawks chalk, you can go to the guy that I've been touting every single week that I'm actually not going to play this week. That is Jonathan Adams. I'm finally not going to play him. So that means he's going to go off. So have at it. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to be pretty heavy on the Brahmas Battlehawks receivers, but it just reminds me of the Sea Dragons Battlehawks from last year.
So Tron, any bold takes here? Do you have any feel on where you're going? It feels like to me, like I'm going to spread myself out a lot this week. You know, look, it's UFL. Like you should be probably spreading yourself out. I don't know how many lineups I'm going to get into the $20. I'm probably going to do the 3-3-3. But I just don't have a firm grasp on where I'm going with wide receiver this week because there's just so many damn guys. What are your thoughts on these top end dudes and anybody jump out to you in the mid range or the lower end that just feels like a good play? Maybe it's just a bold take from you.
Yeah, I would say pretty much to echo everybody so far is, I mean, obviously we're going to target Brahma's Battlehawks receivers. I do like getting back to Latimer this week. I think that the chemistry we saw between Dormady and Latimer last year was just undeniable, and I think that eventually they will pop off again. And I'm willing to bet on that again this week. As far as Battlehawks, I think, like you said, Shepard's probably a little I'm a little more uneasy to play Shepard than I am any of those other guys, Pearson, Butler. I do like Aitman this week. And I think there's some value. I think Scott mentioned it earlier that Vincent Smith for DC is a screaming value this week, especially if you're in a run back with Battlehawk stacks at 3,500. That's just pretty insane to me.
Yeah, and it feels like every week you could almost grab one of these randos and toss them in as a one-off. But there's just a ton of options here, man. Ellie, we're spending a little bit more time talking about wide receivers just because it feels like there's a million guys that we could choose from here. Blake Jackson at 5,500. Marcus, there's just a million guys here. Tyler Vaughn's is still 6,600. If he would have had a breakout game last week, we probably would have saw him priced way the hell up, but he's still in that 6K range. Are you going back to the well, Ellie, on Tyler Vaughn's? Look, it's to me, going against San Antonio, if this turns into a shootout, we could see, 10, 12, 15 fantasy points out of Tyler Vaughn's without even really having a massive game. I don't know. What are you thinking about Vaughn's? What are you thinking about some of these other dudes? Like, we haven't even mentioned Papali or David Davis. There's just so many freaking guys. We haven't even talked about Speedy Stevenson here.
Yeah, the first thing you got to recognize, all these guys are going to be in my player pool. The difference is I'm just not going to have 70% Tyler Vaughn's this week, so I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit more of these guys. I think Kelvin Harmon, I don't think this is shocking news anyways. He's probably going to be 15% owned or more. Kelvin Harmon's in a good spot. Vinny Papali, we saw him get his touchdown last week. These are guys that we know are going to get involved in the offense. I just think you have to have a little bit of exposure to these guys. So
my bold pivot is probably getting to some Blake Jackson. People might not really realize how good Blake Jackson actually is. On Seattle last year, he's a good wide receiver. He just hasn't been worked in. Now, last week, we saw a lot more of him. And that was directly because Shepard. So I'm sure once the show's over, we're going to get those depth charts. We're going to get more information. So make sure you jump in the Discord here. Because if one of these guys is out, that changes a lot. So make sure you're in the Discord. Make sure you're on Twitter following this situation. If one of these guys is limited or is questionable going into the weekend, we might see a value guy absolutely arise and become one of the higher owned dudes on the slate. All right, let's move to defenses here, and then we're going to build a lineup together. I should probably change my top end. Yeah, we're on the breakdown now. My bad, guys. Stallions, 5K. No surprise there. They'll be probably one of the higher owned defenses. The Showboats are getting some ownership here. Saber Sim is projecting them lower ownership at 4,200, but Run the Sims is projecting them around 20% ownership. To me, I would trust a little bit more of the Run the Sims ownership. Obviously, we're going to need to get closer to lock to figure that out. But Scott, what jumps out to you defense-wise? We talk about this every week. I don't think you can ever be, like, at this point in the year, we're not going to just be massively over the field on defenses, at least in my opinion, just because these defenses have not really scored well this year, and the chalk defense always seems to fail. Minus the Stallions are probably a safer play, but they didn't really impress that much fantasy point wise last week. So what are we doing here defense wise?
Yeah. Side note, look out for Tyson at the top of the leaderboard with a old school Sea Dragons Ellison Blake Jackson stack. I can see that happening, Tyson, for you. So on the defensive side, though, here's what I would say. I have absolutely been wrong every single week, hands down. Ellie says it every week. Don't get locked into anybody. He is absolutely correct. If you've got any kind of optimizer that has a min percentage, go ahead and throw them all in at a min 10% because that's basically your best bet. I will have the salary this week. The way I'm playing, I have such a small pool that I will be able to afford the Stallions, so they will be my highest owned. But if you want my natural takes, it's going to be the Brahmas, Panthers, and Showboats. I think the Panthers Showboats game is where I'm going to target most of my defensive exposure. I really like what I saw of the Brahmas last week. I don't like what I saw of the Renegades offense last week. So I think the Brahmas is going to be another stand I take, but I will have enough money for the Stallions. So chances are they'll be my highest owned D.
Look, Tron, all it takes is, Adrian Martinez, falling down wrong and fumbling the football, and the Roughnecks recovering for a touchdown, they're now the highest owned or the highest scoring defense on the slate. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but at 3,600, you got the Renegades. I'm not going to go down the Renegades path, but I feel like all these defenses are in play. Do you have any interest more than the field or less than the field in any of these defenses, or is it just let's play it safe with the Stallions?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, we'll have a sprinkle of all of them, but I do think more than the field, I have interest in Houston, like you said. I definitely think, it's weird. It seems like St. Louis has trouble with DC every time they've played. So I don't know that really matters too much this year, but there's still some interest. Defenders at home at Audi Field, they do seem to play a lot better there than they do anywhere else.
Yeah. No, totally, man. Let's move on to our lineup build here. Oops, I should probably do that. All right, guys. So obviously, jump in the Discord, throw us a like. Let's get to 30 likes. How about that? Let's get it to 30 likes on this video. We appreciate you guys viewing in. I know there's not a ton of these contests may not fill again this week, but we're coming with it every single week. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching the content. Throw us a like, subscribe. If you guys are into NASCAR, we're also doing a NASCAR show on probably either Saturday night or Sunday morning. So check that out. So let's build for the Scott. You said there was a 2-2-2. They released a 3-3-3, or how did that go?
Yeah, they dropped the 2-2-2 and then they swapped it out for the 3-3-3. I think it's because of the tickets. They've been not giving away, but there's been contests for 3-3-3 tickets. And so I think that was the reason being. But yeah, there's a 3-3-3 with 5K up to top, and then there's the 20K up to top in the main. 10K to top in the main.
So let's build for this 3-3-3. Like, we don't have to hit the nuts. Like, you could have a bad lineup and still cash potentially. Like, I like that contest enough. If your bankroll allows you to play that contest, instead of playing a bunch of the $20, I would probably just play the 3-3-3, in my opinion. But let's build for that. So where are we going, Scott, here, like at quarterback? Let's start with our stack. We don't have to massively get correlated in this particular build. Like, we could spread ourselves out a little bit. It's not as big of a contest, obviously, as the $20. So we could kind of spread ourselves out. What are we doing here with stacking? And who's your guy to stack in this sort of chalky, like single entry sort of build?
Yeah, so, I'm always going to say AJ just because he's the play every week. But because of the defenders this week, for me, single entry cash, 3-3-3, whatever you want to call it, I would go Dormady just because I really feel like at that price with his options, he's a great stacking, he's got great stacking options. And look, Reed Sinnett, did pretty damn well against the Renegades last week. So in my opinion, Dormady is a 10 times better quarterback than Reed Sinnett. So I personally would go Dormady.
I'm glad you said that because I was going to play Dormady in this contest for sure. Tron, what do you think about stacking with him in a contest where, we can embrace ownership a little bit, maybe get different in one spot? It feels like we probably should go safe with a guy like Jontre Kirkland with a high floor. Do you have any, thoughts on building for a contest where you don't have to hit the nuts? Probably a Kirkland situation to start. At least get one guy with him. Are you doing two guys with him?
I think 100% you'd have to go Kirkland in this situation. I think it is possible because, what was it, like the first couple weeks, even all the weeks have had like multiple Brahmas in it. So I think it is possible to double stack him even in this contest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think 100% Kirkland's the guy.
So maybe we get different with the Latimer here. Like, maybe we throw Latimer, we throw Dormady, Kirkland, Latimer, just because, look, the Arlington, San Antonio is going to put up some points. I don't care what the Vegas line is. To me, it feels like this situation, they're going to throw the ball a ton. Dormady, Kirkland, Latimer, maybe you could argue that the Latimer doesn't deserve to be in this lineup, but at 7,200, he has huge upside. And we've got the Orlando Guardians connection here, man. Those guys, there's a reason why Latimer was he was the best tight end in the league because He's not a tight end. This motherfucker's running this in the slot. He's a big wide receiver, and Dormady loves him. So, Ellie, what are we doing here? This is obvious. We got to go Ricky Persons here. Like, we can embrace the hell out of that. Now, you could go Jacob Sailors in this lineup and then hedge your tournament lineups. You can embrace the hell out of both of them. Where are you going from here? We got 2 spots left in a defense. Do we want to correlate our running back and our defense? Does it matter in this build? What are you thinking, Ellie?
Yeah, I don't know if it matters in this build. I think we really just try and get the top plays that we can in here. So defense, right? And put in the 5K defense just right out the gate, and then dude, like, this might sound crazy, but I just don't think Ja'Cour Pearson is priced right. Like, I think we just throw him in and see what we can do kind of with that last spot. I think Vincent Smith is actually going to work pretty nicely in there, or maybe that's not enough. 3K is kind of rough, but damn, dude.
Hang on. Sorry, I spelled his name wrong. No, we can't quite get to him. We're $500 short, which is interesting.
Maybe we remove the Stallions.
Maybe go down from the Stallions. Where would you go? Brahmas? Would you go Panthers or Showboats? Is this a Showboat situation, Scott? Because of the backup quarterback in Michigan? Like, just to save a little salary to get us up to Vincent Smith?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Like I said, either the Panthers or the Showboats. To me, I think the Panthers are just as a viable option as the Showboats. But yeah, either or.
So let's get Smith in here, and there's plenty of value, but it feels like this is probably one of the I wouldn't call it safe, but in a 3-3-3, if you get 1 or 2 guys that are just a little bit different, it might be enough to get you there. So Dormady, Person, Kirkland, Latimer, Pearson, Smith from DC, Panthers defense. That's a good starting point. Like, I'm not going to enter this lineup particularly, but this is a good starting point, and you could pivot off of a couple guys. Let's build for the big contest, in quotes. Where are we going here, Scott? Like, is this Adrian? You want to build an Adrian Martinez lineup? You want to get weird with it? You want to go Martinez in Person and a defense? Like, what do you want to do here? Let's leave some money on the table too.
This is. I'll just give you guys my stack for this week. Don't know if it's gonna hit, but it is a 4-person stack. It is Martinez, Person, and then you can swap out Kane or Sternberger, and then the Stallions defense. So you choose Kane or Sternberger, Stallions D. This is my stack this week, and here's why. When Martinez played quarterback for the whole game, Sternberger and Kane looked 1,000 times better. So this is a stack for me. This is definitely going to be my stacks this week, swapping out Kane and Sternberger. And so this is how I would start it. I don't want to eat that many spots up, but that's how I would start it.
This is nice. Let's build. Let's see. Who do you want to build with, Tron? You got somebody jumping out to you? You want to get weird with it?
Nothing too off the board really, but yeah, I do like the Martinez Sternberger thing that Scott just brought up. That is nice.
Let's do that. Let's do Martinez and Sternberger.
I like that, yeah.
And then spread ourselves out. Let's try to get to probably 2 San Antonio guys, maybe Lovett in defense, or let's try to get Lovett in this lineup, because we talked about him as being probably a pretty good play tournament wise because of his ownership. Let's get Lovett. Let's go ahead and put in Brahma's defense. You don't have to do this, but let's make it easy. Now, it feels like we should either get to 1 more San Antonio skill player, like pass catcher, or maybe get to 2 St. Louis guys. Like, Ellie, what are you doing in this situation where we can leave money on the table, and we probably look at all the winning DraftKings lineups for this bigger contest? There's always a dude that's like 1% owned, who's in a good spot that nobody cares about. Where are you going here, man? We got 3 spots to fill.
Yeah, I don't necessarily mind the St. Louis direction. I mean, this is GPP. Man, I want to get a little bit of Aitman. I think I don't think we've gotten a lot of him. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, let's do Aitman and All right, I'm gonna do. No, I'm not doing those guys together. Let's do
swap out Lovett for Ellison, dude. Come on, man. It's the GPP lineup.
All right, screw it. We're going Ellison. Let's pop him in. 8-man. We got 2 spots left. Is this an 8-man Pearson situation? 8-man's gonna be lower owned. Let's go Pearson. Let's try it, man. I cannot in good conscience not play him again. And that leaves us wide open. We got 9,100. If you wanted to go down and grab Persons or Sailors, I think this lineup is unique enough that you could do that. Or you could max out the salary. Scott, what are your thoughts on at this point in the year? Do you think that, we're week 5. Do you think we got to leave a ton of money on the table still? Is the pricing efficient enough that we don't have to leave like $3K on the table just as kind of a rule of thumb? Or can we just max this bad boy out?
I mean, I can definitely tell you from my experience, at least for these last couple weeks, is that the competition is getting stronger. The pools are getting smaller. People know who to play now, right? So you still got to get sneaky and you still got to get different. And I think you should just not worry about salary still. Just let salary be its thing. If you leave 10 grand on the table, that's fine. That lineup what would have been the nuts last week. We still see that, the true optimal last week was about 141. The optimal that the winner and DK played was like 111. We're still 30 points off from the true optimal. So that tells you that even the sharps, it's fucking random, guys. It's spring football. Tyson said it. There's going to be the random 1% or no percent. We have seen a tremendous amount of no percent owned players the last couple of weeks show up in the optimal or be in the true optimal. We just haven't played them, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, to me, don't be afraid. Say with this last spot, you got 9,100, right? Clearly, the obvious choice, everybody's going to gravitate towards that high-end receiver, right? And maybe this week it might be another safe running back. But to me, don't be afraid to drop down and take the lower owned play that you just feel confident in. Like I said, if you see something out there and you feel confident in it, I would play it this week. And, don't worry about how much salary is left on the table.
Yeah, I mean, you could plug in Person here, leave 2K on the table. Like, not that anybody ever is going to play this lineup. I mean, maybe somebody watching the show would play this lineup. But, with a guy like Ellison in there, but you're still leaving 2K on the table. Person's going to be high owned. I don't mind embracing that. But, getting to a guy like Darius Victor or just one of these random ass dudes, even Sailors here, or you could go down to Cody Latimer. Like, there's so many options. And that's the hard part, right? Is these $20 entries in this big contest there's not going to be a ton of casuals entering 10, 20 lineups into that. They're just not. So let's briefly, as we wrap this show up, Scott, I want to hear your opinion on just general strategy this week. If you're hand building lineups, what's your strategy? And where are you starting mentally? Are you going, hey, let's get 2 or 3 San Antonio guys in here. Let's get a St. Louis guy in here. Are you going out of your way to fade those guys? Strategy wise, that's the most important thing here. We could talk about picks all day, but how are we building our lineups? And mentally, what are we doing when we're hand building lineups? Because I think hand building, to me, there's an edge in hand building still. What do you think?
Yeah, you just said it. This week, I'm actually going to be majority hand building. I'm going to use my optimizer as always to figure out ownership and things like that. But I will be hand building predominantly this week. I will have a much, much smaller pool. Just so everybody knows out there, the industry in general is going to lean towards a 2 running back build. We've been waiting for it. It's finally here. It feels good. It feels safe. It's been sketchy these last couple weeks. And I think if you talk about taking a flyer on a receiver, you can have a chance of a goose egg. Jonathan Adams did that to a lot of us last week, where I think if you took, Sailors or Person or Mark Thompson, you're guaranteed points, guys. You're guaranteed points. And I think this is going to look similar to week 1, where we're going to plug in 2 running backs and try to nail the safe receivers. So what that means is a lot of lineups are going to look the same. So if you just get away from St. Louis, look, I will say it as a Battlehawks Kakad Nation lover, I will say it right now. This would be the week to get off of the Battlehawks if you were ever going to do it in DC against the Defenders. I think the Brahmas look great, but there is some sneaky plays out there. For some reason, the Marcus Sims, they keep showing up every week, but no one plays them. So guys like that, are going to be consistent. Hopefully we don't get burned by another Tyler Vaughn's game. But, to me, like I said, the industry is going to lean towards 2 running backs. So if you want to go high-end receivers this week and one running back, you might just be different naturally. But it's going to be a smaller pool this week. And just know, guys, everybody is getting smarter. As the weeks go on, we're going to be playing the same plays. So you got to get different. It's just going to take one player, and a little bit of salary on the table, and you can solo win this thing.
Ellie, what'd you learn this week, man? After this show, it feels, week 5, it feels like we've almost reverted back to, like you said, Scott, like week 1. Like we can get so weird with it because people are not playing some of these dudes who are really damn good just because there's other players who are in a better spot. What'd you learn, Ellie?
Yeah, man. Same thing. We just gotta echo what we say on every show. And advice we didn't take last week. Can't have fucking 70% ownership for one dude. Get some exposure to some of these other guys. There's gonna be somebody that's 2% owned who's gonna have a touchdown and 80 yards, and everyone's gonna be fucking tilting because of it. So open up your player pool. Be willing to play some other guys. Obviously, make sure it makes sense. Don't just be clicking names randomly.
Tron, it feels like these contests suck so bad that for somebody who's got $100-$150 to spend, you're not going to be able to get a lot of lineups in. Like I think there's a mini max out there floating around for maybe $100-$200 to first or so. I don't know, but it feels like if you're just casually trying to play a couple lineups and you got maybe $100 to spend, it's going to be you're going to only build a couple builds, man. So, in your opinion, like, what's the strategy behind just jumping in and building 2 or 3 lineups for this main contest? Are you spreading yourself way out and you're doing 3 different stacks? Or would you just dive into, all right, I'm all in on this stack with a couple of one-offs? Thoughts on that?
I would probably, if I was doing 3 lineups, let's say, I would probably have, if there was one stack I felt confident in, I would have that stack and then maybe a variation of that stack. Like maybe if you wanted to do something with San Antonio or St. Louis, rotate those receivers. But then, the third lineup, I would have a completely different stack, maybe try to get some leverage with a running back from San Antonio or St. Louis in that lineup to leverage out your other lineups. But yeah, that's probably where I would do there.
I'm not giving up on KD Cannon. I'm going to play him again this week. He had a big bomb target down the field. He just didn't connect. I'm playing his ass again. Like Scott said, I'm going down the Morgan Ellison route. He might get 0 points, but I don't give a shit. We're all burning money here anyways playing UFL. I mean, the great thing about UFL is you have everybody almost equally as long as you're paying attention, has a shot at that 10K. And that's why we're doing. That's why we love this shit. So yeah, man, jump in the Discord, guys. Throw us a like on the way out. We appreciate you, Tron. Thanks for jumping in. We appreciate you, A-Dubs King, Scott. We'll see you next week. Let's do it.
And I love it.